Good day, everybody. Very happy to be back with you on Hospitality Talks, discussing challenges faced by this industry. We all know and we've all experienced the impact of COVID-19 has had on all industries, but particularly it has been devastating for travel and tourism industry. Europe's hospitality sector was the first to implement safety measures. However, they have paid a pretty price for this pandemic. As the hospitality sector stumbles from the effects of global pandemic, the common discussion has shifted from simply when will we recover to how we will recover, and how becomes ever more important. Europe, a continent of 50 countries, of which 28 are members of European Union, is much more dependent on cross-border travel, with a lot of different regulations with the cross-border travel. It presents other challenges in this recovery. Today's discussion will focus on these challenges facing the European hospitality industry, and with these nuances, will Europe take longer to recover? And what does that recovery look like? I'm Abid, glad to be here with you, and I'm here with my co-host, Sam-Erik Ruttmann. Sam.
Yes, thank you, Abid, and welcome to the panelists and everyone who is joining our Hospitality Talk show. It's very exciting that we are now back in Europe. Abid keep us mostly in US of some reason, but now he finally agreed that let's take a look how Europe is doing, and we got together a very nice panel to discuss the opportunities and the challenges relating to the tourism. On the consumer side, of course, people are traveling and events are being staged in Spain, and Germans were flying to Mallorca on holiday. So from the consumer point of view, there is a lot of expectations that they like to have a chance to travel. But we are not talking about that. We're talking about other things, and that's why we have a very interesting panel where we're talking about investments and also managing these investments. So let's bring in the panel.
Superb. Sam, we have Dominic Seyrling with Archer Hotel Capital. He's a director of investment. Dominic has a hotelier pedigree with 6th generation of hotel owner and operator within his family. His primary responsibility with Archer includes identifying, sourcing, and executing on investments and other growth opportunities across the platform. We also have joining us today Michelle Weiss, who is head of hotel properties. She leads a team of people working with Aareal Bank, one of the leading debt financing providers within the industry. The bank currently holds a portfolio of over 8 billion euros of hotel financing in more than 20 countries across Europe, North America, and Asia. And lastly, Alex Pritchard, who is the co-founder and CEO of Axiom Hospitality. Alex is a hotelier by trade who developed a platform of Q Green Hotels before exiting from that platform, and he is starting Axiom to help the owners maximize their returns on their investment in the hospitality sector. Welcome to Hospitality Talks, everybody. Thanks for being with us. So if it's okay, Sam, we are going to start with Dominic first. Dominic is very kind to have joined us in between his travel, his first business trip, as I understand, in quite a while. So I'm going to start by asking him what that trip has been like thus far. I think he's joining us from Madrid. Dominic, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Abid. Thanks, Sam-Erik. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you today. Yes, it's been my first business trip since February last year, so it's been a while. I've traveled privately last summer, but I have to say the travel last summer to the travel now has been a lot different. It's been a lot easier to travel last summer. And I think you can see I'm normally based in London, and the UK government, as many of us know, haven't gotten everything right about the pandemic. But I think they have been trying to learn from their mistakes, and they've made traveling a lot more difficult than it was before. So just for me to travel and do a 2-day trip, I have to do a total of 4 COVID tests. I have to fill in all sorts of forms for Spain, for the UK, and then I have to isolate when I'm back in the UK, for which I could take another test after 5 days if I want to get released. So yes, I think this is a clear deterrent from the government for people not to travel. And obviously, it goes without saying that this has an effect on all of us in the industry.
So Dominic, does it make a difference if people that are traveling have been fully vaccinated, or they're all being treated the same way, that you've got to go through this regiment of multiple COVID tests and quarantine?
Yeah, so this makes no difference at all. I think, as you probably well know, the vaccine passport is heavily debated, not just in the UK and the European Union, but I think across the world. And whether that is something that's going to be put in place, we'll have to see what's going to happen. I certainly know that everybody has a bit of an opinion about it. At the moment, nobody's being treated any differently. So it doesn't matter whether you've got the AstraZeneca vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine, whether you've had two jabs or one, or none at all. Everybody's treated the same way.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. This vaccine passport is being heavily debated all around the world, and we'll talk about that a bit when we have everybody together, because that has become a big topic or discussion with different opinions. But Dominic, talk a little bit about the last 6 months. What has it been like? What are you focused on these days, and how have you dealt with this pandemic with a portfolio of about 13 or 14 hotels in major gateway cities?
Yes, so I do have a little bit of an investment bias because my role itself is an investment role. That doesn't mean I'm just focused on new acquisitions. I also look internally to our portfolio. But so let me give you a bit of an idea of what our team's been up to the last 6 months. For the existing portfolio, what we did after the first sort of storm hit us, and we were basically firefighting to make sure that we lose the least amount of money on a monthly basis possible. We have then started to basically reassess the business plan of all of our hotels. Whatever we're doing, did we feel like it was the right thing to do in the short, medium, long term? And that meant that for some hotels, we have considered alternative uses. For some of hotels, we've basically decided doing nothing or doing whatever we've been doing is the right thing. And then one part, which is probably the biggest deviation from what we were doing before, but is something that we started contemplating before, was we really felt that we wanted to be in more control of what's happening operationally at our hotels. At the moment, the vast majority of our hotels are brand managed. And so our idea was really to make sure that we bring the operation of the hotel closer to Archer so that we have a more meaningful say going forward. On the acquisition side, we did actually do a few things. I'd say, as you've had on previous talks and hospitality talks, we all know that there's little distress. Pricing still seems to be high, and the volume of transactions is generally low. However, we signed a transaction, fortunately or unfortunately, in January 2020, which was meant to be a turnkey transaction. So we were meant to complete the transaction once the hotel opens. It was actually here in Madrid. Was meant to open around now, so in May 2021, but fairly early on during the pandemic, it became clear that the construction was going to be delayed. Naturally, we looked at the contract that we had signed at the time, and our immediate reaction was, well, can we get out of this contract? Good news, bad news, we weren't able to get out of the contract, or there wasn't any obvious way to do that. So we tried to be proactive about it, and we we said, well, if our seller is a private equity company and we are a long-term owner of hotels with probably a lower cost of capital, there ought to be a way that we can come up with a win-win agreement for both. So I've spent the beginning of this year renegotiating that transaction, and I'm very pleased to say that we managed to actually complete the transaction early before it opens, to make sure that the seller gets their money early. And for us, what was in it is that we completed at a reduced price, so there was a bit of a win-win for everyone. So apart from that, that was really the only main acquisition we've done. It's difficult to participate in arm's length transaction processes at this point in time because it just appears to be a little bit expensive. But we've participated in an auction for some land next to a hotel, which is land adjacent to a hotel next to us. So we've been able to do that as well. So we've been busy, but not with what we'd normally be busy with.
Fair enough. Dominic, you talked about the transaction that you did, and you were referring to before the hotel opens. I just want to make sure, is it referring to a new build, or is it referring to reopening of the hotel after pandemic?
It's a new build hotel. So that the original transaction was meant to be a turnkey. So you complete once the hotel first opens.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I just wanted to make sure. And you also talked about gaining better control of your assets and what goes on there. Would you be able to talk a bit more about that? And I know you recently had one of your hotels go from a branded environment to independent environment. And if you could talk a bit about what went on into that decision-making process.
Yes, I mean, my comments about control should not be understood as a criticism of a brand or an operator out there. I think it became just very, very clear that sometimes the decisions that we would like to make for the business are not necessarily in our control. And considering that we are losing millions of euros every month before we're paying Aareal their interest, we just wanted to make sure that we are in control as much as possible. The situation that you're talking about is actually a hotel that used to be the Meridian Piccadilly in London. When we originally bought it 10 years ago, we thought that at this point in time, we'd probably be selling it unencumbered, vacant possession to maximize pricing. However, the company has changed. We have different owners, a different perspective. So what we felt is what we wanted to do in this case is we wanted to see, well, what does it actually do? A lot of people always have opinions about what the difference is between a branded and an unbranded hotel. What we felt as long-term owners, we felt we wanted to have a little bit of a test case, if you like, where we have a like-for-like comparison between the brand-managed hotel and an unbranded hotel. So we gave the hotel to Axiom. Alex is on this call today to operate it for us. We believe Axiom are up there with the best operators who could do a really good job for this hotel. And once they've been able to look after the hotel for a few years, we'd have the perfect comparison between the hotel as brand-managed and not brand-managed. Unfortunately, a little thing called COVID-19 came in between, and we will never, ever be able to have a like-for-like comparison between the hotel before and after brand managed. But we're still going through with it because we feel we want to be able to assess where are people like Alex and his team able to make a difference. What is the revenue going to look like once they've been able to look after the hotel for a little bit? Where have they been able to maybe run things a bit more efficiently? Where have they been able to save some costs? And we just wanted to make sure that we have the ability to weigh up the pros and cons of the brand versus not the brand in isolation without having a lot of noise from other people telling us what their thoughts are.
Dominic, I'm sure these discussions have to be held asset by asset because, as we all know, our business at the end of the day is a street corner business. Have you seen any trends relative to brand delivery versus delivery through other channels? Have you seen consumer preference where they might like an independent, more uniquely positioned hotel versus possibly a branded property? Any thoughts on that? And did that go in your discussions while you were deciding to pull the trigger?
Yeah, it's interesting. Have we seen any trends? I mean, one trend you can see when you're in Europe, you always look to what's happening in the US. Because in the US, the model of the franchise business, it's much more prevalent across mid-scale up to luxury than it is here in Europe. In Europe, the franchise model is very much here and it's here to stay, but it's generally sort of stops at the upscale level and it doesn't go above. Our hotels are generally upper upscale and luxury. So franchise is something we want to maybe explore, but it's not necessarily an option that we have with all of our hotels. So the US are a trend from that point of view, where you can combine the benefits of the brand delivering the maximum revenue with the benefits of owning yourself or having a white label operator who can run it more efficiently. I'd say the other trends, and I think that's maybe something where maybe Europe is different from the States, is that the traveler in Europe doesn't necessarily want to be in a cookie cutter and wants to be told, you're the typical Hilton customer, and by the way, you're checking in, here's your cookie. I think they want something which is a little bit more unique, and therefore we have certainly seen hotels out there that have been able to exceed the performance of branded hotels when they were not branded. I wouldn't say that's the rule. I definitely would not say that's generally the rule. Brands have a lot going for themselves, and a lot of customers, especially the high-paying customers, which often are the American ones, they like being comforted by a brand, especially when they come across the Atlantic, and then they don't necessarily know how good is the product that I'm going to stay at. So relying on the brand helps.
Well, that's an excellent point. The brand proliferation actually started from U.S. to Europe to Asia to Middle East, and in some ways, even in U.S., the trends of boutique hotels that are sort of independently branded, that is continuing on, and from what we have been able to gather, that's the at least the younger generation, the millennials, almost prefer being able to experience different things as opposed to a consistent branded property. Dominic, I'll turn it over to Sam here in a little bit, but the valuations of assets as you are evaluating the acquisition arena, what does that look like? Have you come across things that make returns possible? Are you having to include some of the carry costs as we come out of this pandemic? Tell us a bit about how are you able to value some of these assets that are being presented to you?
I mean, the valuation, there's no secret to it. Obviously, we're forward-looking business, so we will just take a look at whichever property we're looking to potentially buy, put the business plan together that we believe is suited for the property, that will also maximize the returns. Without that, unfortunately, we wouldn't be successful in acquiring any property out there. And then we'll take whatever return requirements that we have, and that generally results in pricing that we're able to offer for the properties. I think there's no secret, but I think what I would say is that if I look at the transaction market today, and I look at the transactions where I think people are bidding, where I think people are completing transactions, what the underlying assumptions ought to be is that they're generally pricing a quick recovery. That's what I'm seeing. They're generally pricing that performance of the hotels will go to peak after that recovery. So they will go back to 2018-19 levels after that, generally not more than 2-3 year recovery has been factored in. And the exit assumption is entirely unchanged from what it would have been 2 years ago. Those are the assumptions that are clearly behind some of these leading bids that we're seeing. And that's probably the reason why a lot of people will find it difficult to be successful in the acquisition markets at this point in time.
Well, thank you for that. I'd really appreciate it. Let me turn it over to Sam-Erik, and I will be back with you in a moment. Sam.
Thank you, Abid. Dominic, I'm very interested to know and learn a little bit about which markets are you focusing, and perhaps do you see a change in your focus now, particularly looking at the beyond the pandemic?
I mean, the way we look at markets, generally the markets that we were focused before were the key gateway cities across Europe. The markets that, to cut it really short, the markets that we're going to look after the pandemic are the key gateway cities across Europe. So from that point of view, there is not a lot of difference. The way we're looking at it is we're saying, well, what are the segments? We will tailor our business plan according to what we think the recovery trajectory of that hotel will look like. So for a domestic leisure-driven hotel, I think that should happen quite quickly. For the international hotel that may have some more corporate demands, that will be happening more slowly. The reason why we like key gateway cities is because the data is available, it is supply constrained, and it's a liquid. It's typically been the most liquid of markets, and that generally makes it interesting for us. We believe that if you are going to be supply constrained and you have this liquidity, that's going to help us going forward as well.
Yeah. So, for instance, Europeans like to spend time on destinations for leisure destinations. So you don't see leisure destinations being a area which you like to look ahead. That might be interesting. So, or what are your thoughts on particularly those areas where, for instance, where the British tourists like to travel on their holidays, or the Germans or the Europeans in general?
Yeah. Look, I do think these markets will likely recover quicker than a lot of the, ironically, the hotels that we are invested in, they've been the hardest hit in this pandemic, no doubt. And I would agree with you. If I had a hotel in, a regional resort in the UK at the moment, I'm probably fairly happy with my prospects in the short-term future. However, we have to look at ourselves and think, well, what is our expertise? We don't have expertise to run resorts. We don't have the team in place. And I would say resorts over the longer term, they are a total revenue play and not really a RevPAR play. So there's a bit more to it than just filling the beds. You have to offer a lot more around it for the leisure customer of that sort. So we just don't feel we're well placed to take advantage of that. We think there are people who know these markets better than us. And yes, it'd be nice to expand our strategy, but it would be difficult to compete with people who basically know better what they're doing than we would.
Right. And then when we're looking at the key gateway cities, which are the sort of the top 5 that you are thinking are sort of the hottest cities where you are located, or where you'd like to be located in?
Well, where we would like to be located, usually the ones where we don't really have the presence at the moment. So we've struggled in London for a long time. We have Paris, but we do like Paris. We've just bought in Madrid. We've gone very heavy in Spain generally, so we like Barcelona and Madrid. The German markets have always eluded us slightly. That's because it's very much a lease-driven model, and we are not generally going down that route. So we'd love to have a hotel in Munich, but I think when we're having quite a specific strategy, and we tend to have the larger hotels. We don't want to pigeonhole ourselves by going after a specific market, because there may only be 1 or 2 or 3 opportunities coming up in the next 2-3 years. And if that's the case, then that means I would have to be really, really aggressive, maybe more so than I'd like to be, in order to be successful. If I have a more wider view about these key gateway cities, if I have 20 cities in mind, then I can go after the opportunities that I think will be able to drive value of our company.
Yeah, I mean, I just read about what's happening in the events business in Spain, that, some huge events being staged already in the coming summer. So it's clearly like Barcelona of the cities are really coming back very strongly with their events. The all kinds of events
Let's hope
going on. Automotive events in Barcelona is in July already, so they are very, very keen on that. Well, Dominic, thank you very much. These were actually my questions. I'm very thank you very much for sharing your views on this. And back to you, Abid.
Thank you, Sam. And we'll bring in our next guest here in a bit, Dominic, but a couple of other questions. Talk a little bit about when you're underwriting these acquisitions, are you underwriting for 10-year hold, longer hold, shorter hold, and sort of why?
Generally, I mean, why? Generally, we're underwriting 10-year holds. We've certainly have the ability to underwrite shorter term holds as well, but we want to be able to compare each investment to another. So we want to be able to say, even though we might have a business plan to hold something for 5 years or even for 20 years, we want to be able to assess the potential returns against each other and the risks that are associated with that. For that reason, we typically underwrite 10-year returns so that we're able to compare our investments with each other, but that does not mean that for a specific investment, we might not change that period to something shorter or potentially longer.
And last question, what's in the future for Archer? Are you obviously are looking for other acquisition opportunities, but fast forward 5 years down the line, what do you think is in the future for Archer?
So we're 2 years old as a company. We've inherited a magnificent portfolio of about 12 hotels, 2 billion euros. What we've done is we bought a few, we sold one. What I'd like to see is that we take our own portfolio, and what we have done over the last 6 months bears fruit, and we're able to significantly invest in our hotels. Hopefully are able to change the operating model with some of them, take more control of the operations in the future, hopefully work with Alex and his team a little bit more. And then so for us, that's the logical step. Next step is for us to get more involved in the operations, to spend money in the hotels, to really reposition them, and hopefully add a few more, because once you are involved and you understand what you can do to the operation of your hotels, you'll be able to transfer that knowledge onto other hotels, which hopefully will give us a competitive advantage and ideally grow over the next few years along the way.
Well, fantastic. Thank you for all that, Dominic. Please stay with us. We'll have you back in a moment. And at this particular point, I would like to bring up Michelle Weiss as our next guest. Sam, I think Michelle might have gotten disconnected, so we need to bring her back in, if you wouldn't mind. If there are oh, there she is. Superb. Well, Michelle, thank you for taking the time and joining us. I really appreciate it. You've heard some of the conversation through Dominic. Now, you guys have a huge portfolio around the world. Talk a little bit about what's the last year been like. How are you working with sponsors? Have there been any defaults? Have there been any workarounds in while you're dealing with the clients?
Yes, indeed. We have, as you mentioned at the very beginning, a portfolio of over 8 billion of hotels across North America, Europe, Asia, and Australia. And when over a year ago now, the pandemic hit, obviously that has changed quite a bit. As you can imagine, a lot of our hotels that we finance, I would say well above 85%, have closed during at one point in time. So for us, it was very important at the very beginning to understand what is going on, to be very close to our clients. We had regular contact continuously, and to find short-term solutions, to understand what is required, what needs to be done. You mentioned default before. Theoretically, even closing a hotel would theoretically trigger a default. With no cash flow or even negative cash flows, that triggered a couple of financial covenant breaches, etc. So it required a lot of work internally for us to be, as you can imagine, 8 billion of loans. Those are many facilities, many hotels. So it required a lot of work from our side. We were very close to our clients, trying to find solutions, dealing with that. We were very supportive. Obviously, waiving covenants. We have flexibilities in terms of amortization, and in some, although the minority of the cases were even able to help through liquidity. But at the same time, I must also say we had our clients are very committed to the assets. They have obviously seen 10 to 12 years of growth in globally, really, and we're also able to build up reserves through that. And for us, the sponsor was always a key to our underwriting parameters and analysis. So we always focused on sponsors that understand hotels, that are committed to the hotel asset classes, and are not jumping on board up and reaching the market cycle, and because the hotel produces higher yields, etc. So we have clients that remain and are very much committed, and as long as that is the case, we can be very supportive as well. So I think that's what we've been busy with in the past year in terms of the kind of existing loans on our books.
So, Michelle, Dominic talked about, generally speaking, people are underwriting a quick recovery in Europe. What are your colleagues, your economist types within your organization, and other people that are focused on this industry? What are their thoughts? Do you concur that a quick recovery is in the works?
I think, again, we're very close to our clients, to advisors, obviously how our use internally, and I think generally it's difficult to say what is really going to happen. I mean, this crisis, you always try to compare crisis with previous crises and try to find comparisons, and it took 6 years or 4 to 6 years until ADRs were back, etc., etc. So you try to make this comparison, but I think this crisis is very unique, and we have not experienced something like that previously. So it is very difficult to make predictions as such. But I think we're all expecting, with the vaccinations and hopefully consequently with the travel restrictions, easements, etc., for eventually travels to pick up fairly quickly as well. I think in the market of what we hear and kind of share this view is the expectation that within 3 to 4 years, we will be back to similar levels again. But again, I think it's a lot of it's really a difficult predictions to make. But I think we saw last summer, so we had the hard lockdowns for most part of the world in the spring, and then during the summer the first easements, and with that we saw how willing especially leisure travelers were to travel, how they wanted to go somewhere, and how certain hotels that were really focusing on that kind of market, so these staycation markets, have been benefiting very well during the summertime, before then obviously infections rose again and restrictions came back. But I think that gives us a bit of a comfort, and hopefully as soon as vaccination and restrictions consequently ease up, that recovery will come back earlier than hopefully we all expect.
Fair enough. Michelle, you talked about comparisons to prior cycles. Of course, we haven't dealt with a public health issue for a longest time. But apart from the causation in this cycle, are there really any similarities, or is it just so different that you can't really compare anything?
I'm sure there are comparisons, and that we all look back and try to learn from, from previous crises. But on one hand, obviously, I think the COVID pandemic has hit, especially the tourism hospitality industry, quite considerably in a way that we've never experienced or could have expected, really. Where not even a certain diversification geographically or by asset type has helped in the short term, at least. So on one hand, this has been really considerably a harder impact than what we've seen for the tourism industry previously. On the other hand, when you look at the more the financial investment side of all of that, is we're actually in a more comfortable situation than when we compare for the financial crisis 12 years ago, as, for example, the leverages are fairly considerably lower than what we've seen back then. And interest costs, for example, the all-in rate, at least, with Euribor, with LIBOR being so low or even negative, is quite lower than back then. So that obviously is helpful currently for the cash flow in that respect. I think another big difference is also the capital on the market that we are currently seeing. There's a lot of new equity that has been risen, capital just waiting out there for new opportunities and waiting to be invested. So I think that is a clear difference to a previous crisis as well. Plus, I think this time, what we also see and what's helpful for the hotels are the governmental relief programs, the benefits in regards to payroll or governmental backed loans that we do see at least in Europe, but also elsewhere, which is really beneficial for the hotels and help the owners in terms of a cash flow quite a bit.
Michelle, you talked about LIBOR. Certainly, Feds in US have talked about keeping the interest rates very, very low. Yet, by all accounts, the cost of debt generally is going up. Talk a bit about that. What is going into it when you're evaluating these potential opportunities? Are you placing higher risk on this industry? Is that the main reason? Or are there other reasons leading to the cost of debt going up?
Yes, definitely. I mean, our refinancing costs obviously have increased a bit as well. But it is clearly the increased risk these asset classes present at the moment. With hotels being closed, I mean, we financed for the first time last year actually hotels, closed hotels in that respect. So that was a new thing. But that obviously is a quite a considerable risk, and we have assets that not only not producing positive cash flow, but even negative cash flow at the moment. And it's very unpredictable, and you don't know, as mentioned before, we all hope for a quick recovery, but it's very unpredictable, and we don't really know how much longer it will take, with the vaccination, with the restrictions, and whether that then really brings us through, etc. So it is definitely the high risk involved. And at the same time, you also have a considerable decrease on the debt market, decrease in liquidity, with various lenders having exited the market for the time being, at least, and not much debt available currently. So, but it definitely is the increased risk that we currently have with these asset types.
Okay. Well, Michelle, let me turn it over to Sam-Erik here for a few minutes, and I'll be back with you shortly. Sam, I think you're muted. The single most commonly used phrase.
Yes, and it's usually the co-host. Well, it all at least brought a laugh, which is very important in the serious times. But I want to discuss with you a little bit about, Michelle, about green financing, your views on it, because of course, via sustainability attracts customers to hotels. People are very interested to stay in hotels that claim that they are sustainable. But when it comes to the financing, it's of course a very interesting topic. And what are the opportunities and perhaps challenges, if you could share from your point of view about green financing, which is a big buzzword. People are very interested in it these days.
No, you're right. I mean, green financing or ESG is a very big term at the moment, and obviously we as Aareal Bank are want to do our share as well and want to contribute within the real estate market as much as possible as well. Being able to create more transparency and facilitate, incentivize with green financing. So we at the bank, we have reviewed our portfolio, looked for, really focusing on portfolio transparency. We reviewed up to 85% of our overall book and have identified a considerable part of our loans that could theoretically already qualify as green financing or green loans. We are in the starting phase of being able to issue green financing loans as well. Obviously, there's already that in the market. There's, I think, more and more investors looking for that specifically, and other investors where we're trying to incentivize to really push for these green standards going forward. So I think we have identified, being active in so many countries. I think currently it's almost 30 countries. It's very difficult to identify green standards that are easy for us to work. So we have now identified property certificates, energy certificates, consumption per square meter, etc., in order to be able to issue these green financing. And so we're in the process of doing that. We are able to do that as of now. And, there's obviously also we're refinancing ourselves through the German fund brief. And there's also the ability to put a green bond and issue a green bond as such. So we are in the process of really making this more available for our clients and to facilitate and incentivize, really going through this and focusing on these green standards as well on the real estate market.
Okay, very interesting. Just another quick question about there is a discussion, and of course that's something else which is in the initial stages, is like a blockchain and cryptocurrencies. And are you looking at those parts of in your financing picture also, or do you leave it for other people to deal with that?
I think for the time being we leave it to other people to deal with that. To my knowledge at the moment, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Yeah, because there are some cases now. I'm quite interested to see what kind of financing is done or these days. And in the US, there are some cases already, whether it's in the Airbnb kind of projects, or a luxury hotel in Colorado. So there are some cases, but I think that we are still in a very infant stages about this. But thank you very much, Michelle, and let me give it back to Abid for the final questions. Now he's muted.
No, I know. Yeah, he's.
Oh, sorry about that. I just was replicating you, Sam.
Sure.
A couple of quick questions, Michelle, before we bring our next guest in. You talked about the importance of the right sponsor as you are evaluating these lending opportunities. Are there other things that go into it? I was discussing with Dominic the independent versus branded. I know in U.S. market, having a professional management team or having a branded hotel certainly plays in favor of finding debt. Talk a little bit about what goes into you evaluating some of these opportunities.
Yes, I think, what from our perspective, there's a couple of things we're looking at. So obviously, key is, looking at, it needs to be the right asset in the right location. For us, as you've mentioned, for the sponsor is key, especially in situation right now, where the continued long-term commitment is more and more important in order to go through such a crisis. In terms of the operational side, we from the bank we're looking at various structures, and we feel comfortable with various structures. We always say we don't. Several German banks, especially, they're focusing only on leases, and we're a bit slightly different in that respect, as we very much like management agreements and franchise agreements as well. But at the same time, we also have some hotels in our portfolio that are independent, or even actually kind of what Dominic is going through at the moment, also have supported a hotel that went from being internationally branded in order to reposition and now being operated independently. So we always say we are hotel professionals. We have a team of 10 people in our headquarters in Germany, and they have a hotel background, so we know bankers, we're more hoteliers. And consequently, we feel very comfortable with this concept and understand the operational factor behind it. So while I do agree that I think the majority of our portfolio are probably internationally branded hotels, we don't shy away of new brands or of independent hotels to finance something like that. I think for us, the key is the sponsor behind it and the operator at the end of the day, and believing in their expertise. I think that's the key. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Michelle. That's terrific. Please stay with us. We'll have you back in a moment. At this particular point, I'd like Alex Pritchard. Alex, thanks for taking the time to join us. You heard from an owner and a lender's lens as to what's going on in our industry. Talk a little bit about what is it like operating a hotel in such a volatile time. You might have 100% occupancy for 2 days, and the next day government tells you to shut down because there is a spike in infections. Talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you're up against.
Absolutely. Abid, Sam, thank you very much for inviting me today to talk on Hospitality Talks. I think, we've all been through an incredibly difficult time as an industry. And I think that when I'm looking back at how we've operated over the last 6 to 8 months since we've been in control of a number of the properties, it's been a really interesting period because the customer has found out at the same time as the operator what the restrictions are. So as quick as we are changing our operating standards or the way we look at a business, the customer is already making decisions about what they can and can't do. So that's been an interesting environment to be in. I think from an occupancy level, and I think moving forward, now we're starting to see restrictions drop away come in the UK from sort of May the 17th. We're seeing some occupancy bounce back, but mainly, as per what Dominic has said, a lot of this is leisure driven and a lot of it's domestic leisure. So we're seeing days of the week getting back to strong occupancies like Fridays, Saturdays and Sundays, and the weekends in city locations and sort of the major attractions. But the corporate market is lagging dramatically behind. So what we're going into an environment where your occupancy may be 50, 60, 70% one day and then back to 20 the next. And having the control and the flexibility within the workforce to be able to maintain the service levels, particularly in the 4-star and luxury segment, is quite challenging. So we're looking at things that we can do in terms of, for an example, food and beverage and restaurant offerings, looking at menus and looking at how we can adapt menus, because you can imagine one day you may have a huge stock holding because you have sort of 250 people in for breakfast, and the following day the occupancy drops to 20%, and you're looking after 30 or 40 covers. So we're refining menus, we're changing the way we do things. We're looking at sort of base staffing levels for properties so that when occupancy levels are low, we've got the facilities in the hotel to be able to operate, but making sure we've really got flexibility. And I think moving forward, flexibility is probably going to be the real key to running operations. If we look at traditional methods of operations and we look at underwriting and where we've got involved in forecasting, there's a number of ratios operators look at: payroll percentages, laundry per room sold, commission levels. And I think they're fine in a stable environment, looking at a payroll percentage and saying, well, yes, that looks competitive in the market. But when your occupancies are 80% one night and 30% the next, you really need to have control over it on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's where detail and the focus on detail really comes into its own. And I think also from a viewpoint of how we're operating, we're not getting obsessed by statistics. I think, in a stable market, looking at STR, looking at hot stats, looking how you can outperform your competitors is very important. And it shows you how you can move your ADR or how you can move your occupancy levels. In the market we're experiencing at the moment and seeing booking trends and where they're moving forwards, one group, this piece of business in one hotel can make a dramatic difference in terms of STR. So I think it's really getting into the detail of the numbers and understanding the detail and being a bit obsessed about cost control in the current environment would be my opening gambit.
Well, Alex, thank you for that. UK is in a very unique position. Not only that UK market is dealing with this pandemic, though the vaccination rates are terrific in UK, but also with the Brexit, there are lots of labor challenges. People that were furloughed might have gone back to their home countries or destinations, and bringing them back in is going to be a challenge. That might create huge labor shortages for UK. What are you seeing? What are your thoughts as to what that will be like and how can people overcome that?
Yeah, it's an incredibly difficult challenge to manage. At the moment in the UK, a number of our employees are on furlough. It's well known in the hospitality and industry in the UK. 60% in London, for example, are employees from the EU. And a lot of the employees have been on furlough now for 12 months, and some have gone home to their European countries, and some are obviously based here in the UK. I think the challenge for us is looking down the line. I don't think it's the short-term challenge, because I think occupancy levels will grow at a pace. So it won't be that we'll have to turn everything on overnight. But I think if you look at the employment level in the UK at the moment, the unemployment level, there's predictions that it will be around 6% towards the end of this year. And the majority of those people are within the below 35-year age group. And I think from a hospitality standpoint, we need to get a handle on promoting hospitality as a career. I think, you know, it's a fabulous industry to come into, and for people to come and work through different opportunities and different ways of looking at property, and through food and beverage, rooms, finance, sales, commercial. And I think that if we get that message out as an industry, we want to encourage some of the people who are looking for a role coming out of university, who are under the age of 35 and want to come and get involved, because I think that will be the area we will all be recruiting in. There is significant challenge within recruitment, and there was going into 2019 levels. And I think that moving forward, the occupancy shortfall in the short term, the next 18 months, will give us the opportunity to get our plans in action and make sure that we've got those people ready to fulfill the roles once the occupancy returns. But I don't think we can underestimate in any shape or form the challenge we will have in getting frontline staff back into our businesses. And we need to be promoting this industry, that people can have a tremendous career within it, because it is an incredible industry.
I tend to completely agree with you. Having spent my entire career in this industry, it has been an incredible journey for me personally. I must confess, even prior to pandemic, the industry needed to do a better job of attracting future leaders. With pandemic in place, it actually has scared a lot of people from this industry, because the unemployment has been through the roof. It has been battered over the last year. So most recently, talking to some of the students in my alma mater, these questions constantly come up. What can industry do differently to attract future leaders in this environment?
I think it's a really interesting point. I mean, people have always, we've done a number of presentations in universities and colleges across the UK, and had open days for young people to come and get involved in the business. And I think sometimes hospitality is seen as a part-time job. It's seen as something I'll do whilst I'm at uni, or I'll do while I'm at school, and then I'll go and get a proper job. And I think from that thought process, the industry needs to understand that these people there is a career out there, and there is a career for people to be able to run multi-million-pound businesses, to be able to get involved in acquisitions and finance. And whether you are a commercial expert, and you want to, there's nothing better than selling a luxury hotel. So I think it's positioning our industry in the viewpoint that whether you are a great financier, you're a great commercial side, you're a great operator, you're a people person, you want to provide experiences. I mean, we get to deal with people on their wedding day, you know, we get to deal with people at the best times in their lives. And I think it's about the messaging, and it's not a part-time job, although we do need people part-time, but that actually you've really got an opportunity within the hospitality industry to create experiences and give people some fantastic dreams. So I think it's about messaging, and I think it's about us as an industry getting out there into universities, getting into colleges, explaining that to people, and showing examples and best practice of the people that have been on these calls and talked to yourself and Sam, and where they've come and what their background was. And I think that's a very important message that needs to get out there.
You know, if people think that this is a part-time job and they'll go and get a real job, I guess I'm still looking for that real job.
Me too, Pat. Me too, Abid. Me too.
And having known Sam for multiple years, he and I have spent a lot of time in this industry and really enjoyed it. I think thinking about that comment, I have to recover from it. So let me turn it over to Sam, and I'll be back with you. Sam, you're muted again.
That technology overwhelms me sometime. But what I was saying is that this passion that we have, because we didn't feel it's a work, it's a lifestyle, and I think that drives even during the challenging times to do things that we love most. Alex, I want to talk a little bit about the impact of technology. And what actually reminds me of this, I was watching a documentary last night about Auguste Escoffier and César Ritz. And they were teamed up together to open hotels, but also they were very advanced in technology, and people were saying that they're absolutely crazy. And when we talk today to hoteliers about using the latest technology that will help the customer to give them a better experience, some hoteliers will say, well, no, I'm not going to be the first one. I want to watch who else is going to do something. What are your thoughts about how ahead of the game should you be in implementing the technology that is actually available but not implemented yet in hotels to enhance the experience for the customer before they even come in and stay with you?
Yeah, I mean, technology from our point of view and from hotels' point of view, we've always lagged a little bit behind the curve, I think, in hospitality. I remember one phrase at a technology conference. It was always hoteliers were scared about being the Betamax, so they didn't want to invest because something better was always going to come along. And I think this pandemic, in some respects, has probably speeded technology up, probably by 2 to 5 years, maybe, in terms of mobile check-in and apps and being able to access rooms. And I also think consumer patterns have now changed. I was not a huge supporter or customer of a takeaway product, but during lockdown I've used Deliveroo and I've used Just Eat to order food to my home, and the expectation that a customer is not going to be in a hotel and use those apps and facilitate that demand. And then you say, well, how is that operationally going to impact room service? Are we going to expect our customers to ignore the things they've been doing for the last 12 months and go back to our historic way of doing things? So I think technology is going to change, and I think it's likely to be customer-led. I've commented a number of times on the fact that a lot of us have 250 TV channels in our bedrooms at home, and we have Wi-Fi speeds of incredible, being able to download things, and hotels have been slow and behind the pace. And I do think that needs to speed up. And we've looked at a number of things that we've adopted. We've put in some mobile ordering in our restaurants to allow people to order as soon as they sit down, and be able to be upsold other dishes, etc. And that works well. And the only way I base this is I think a customer has a variety of different reasons for staying in a hotel. There are some people who want the experience and the leisure and wants that sort of fine dining experience and we're going through the menu and talking about the wines, etc. And then there's the other guy who just wants to come as a corporate, sit down and order his food, get his bill, and get on with his job and be on his laptop. And I think as hotels, we need to adapt to both of those. I don't think going just down the line of technology is right, because I think we will end up just promoting select service and Airbnb and all of the guys that don't have the facilities that people can give. But I think a hotel needs to fit the two criteria of the leisure guest and the experienced guest who wants to come and have the smile at the front desk and wants to be told all about the facilities, as well as the chap who just wants to walk in, get to his room, drop his bags and get something to eat. So I think the speed of these things is going to change over the next couple of years. I think COVID has come along and speeded up mobile check-in and speeded up guest key interface, and also restaurants scanning codes and putting things through your phone, etc. So I think it certainly speeded up, but I don't think as an industry we're there yet in terms of being able to offer that seamless process. Some brands are better than others, but that would be my view on it.
Yeah. What would be your favorite piece of technology that has been actually implemented now and it has kind of fast-tracked because of the pandemic? Any particular thing that comes to your mind?
Well, we rolled out an iPad system called Tabletop into our restaurants and our bedrooms. And basically, this is a opportunity to order food and beverage from a touchpad. It tells you about the drinks, it tells you about what the accompaniments are, it upsells the side orders, etc. And we saw an increase in our average spends by about 12% by using that technology. And we also found that customers were more likely to use the facilities knowing that they weren't in there for an hour and a half or 2 hours or however long it took to have the meal. So we rolled that out pretty quickly. We tested it in two sites and moved very, very quickly to get that across all of the properties. And also the advantage of having it within the hotel bedrooms goes back a little bit to the Deliveroo and Just Eat point. If I can take my phone out and order food from an outside supplier, then if I have an iPad and I can order from the hotel or from one of the hotel suppliers, then there's opportunities for that business to make money. So that certainly worked for our properties.
Very good. Yeah, I have seen that working very well, and I think that's a very nice addition to the customer experience. There's so many more technologies that are really coming up. There's that conversational technology, which some people don't like at all, that you're in your hotel room and you ask Alexa or Siri a question, and then they are second guessing that and make upselling recommendations. Maybe we are not that far yet into the implementing that type of technology, but I think it goes step by step. But I think what's very important is that getting all these technology, that collecting the data about the customers, and also in that way tailor or customize their experience, and kind of delight them in advance, and because they will always be delighted and surprised when the hotel knows a little bit more about them than they thought they knew about them.
Oh, I totally agree. And profiling and understanding your customer is going to be the key to what services and technology you use. I mean, I understand about the conversational piece, and I wonder to myself, if I'd got to my hotel at 5 o'clock and I had a conference call with the US at 5:30, and next thing calls are being made to my room or things are changed, the people are asking me questions. There's an experience for each individual customer, and understanding the profile and the reason for stay is absolute paramount to keeping the loyalty of those guests.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Alex. Abid, any further questions from you before we put everybody together?
Yeah, just Alex, you heard Dominic's and Michelle's point of view on independent versus branded. I know in your past life you had operated both legacy brands versus independently branded hotels. Any thoughts that you might have? What works, what doesn't work?
Yeah, I mean, we work with all of the major brands and have operated all of the major brands. And I must say, during the pandemic, the brands have been incredibly supportive in both cost control, guidance, standards, etc. And you know what you're going to get with a brand. Big system delivery, big distribution. There is a view that international travelers and people who are coming after COVID will look to the brands for ensuring COVID safe and cleanliness, and I think that's important. I mean, very important. And I suppose the analogy that I look at from a independent and a big brand is it's a bit like a speedboat and a cruise liner, and the cruise liner has a lot of people on it, but it just moves a little bit slower. And I think if you are an independent property and you are located in the right location, which is critical, being independent does allow you to move quite quickly and able to make sure that your proposition is appropriate to your market. So if you look at, for example, the Dilly in London, which is obviously located right next to Piccadilly Circus, you know, we have an option there as an independent to bring in London suppliers. So all of the drinks are from London suppliers. We've got pop-up restaurants going into all of the food and beverage space. You know, we put a real emphasis on it being a London property. So if you're coming to London, come and stay at the hotel, because it really is London. And I think sitting in a branded environment, that's a lot difficult. That's more difficult because people are looking at that cookie cutter approach and what you get. But then when the brands really turn it on is in tertiary locations, and when you're not in a location, which is the Dilly Inn, when you need support in some of the regional markets, and also that, you know, the international travelers. So an independent hotel normally doesn't sort of live outside of a consortia program. They're still reliant on large corporate deals and GBS schemes and promotions, etc. So they're not really ever truly standalone. But as an operator, it does give you the chance to add some creativity and put something a little bit more special or boutiquey. And I think what we found in when we had the last shutdown and we opened up in August, some of the independent hotels in London, which were more lifestyle, were performing incredibly well with age groups below 35 who were using the properties because of the differences that they had rather than some of the branded products. But then the distribution and systems from brand are incredible, and the Bonvoy members in Marriott and the IXG rewards have a huge customer base. So there's definitely a role for both in the market, and it does all depend on location, style of hotel, and what the offering would be as independent, and whether it would add any value outside of the brand.
Well, thank you for that, Sam. If it's okay, let's bring everybody back in, and I'll continue to ask Alex a question. Alex, should we be thinking about redoing the hotel classifications? Does it really make sense to have upper upscale and select service? And is there a difference other than maybe $30 in rate? Does consumer even know the difference in these things?
And somebody put in upper upscale. So it was kind of like we've moved the categories as we've all decided that we need to enter different markets. I mean, we run select service products, some residence inns in London, and obviously luxury properties like the Dilly. And there is a big difference between the two offerings. And I go back to the point of, if you have an 80% on a Saturday night and then a 30% on a Monday, those customers who are arriving at the Dilly for 80% are expecting a certain quality of service, people, food and beverage offerings, bars open, spas open, leisure clubs open, and facilities open. Whereas in select service, you're not really changing the parameters of your offering as much. So I think it's important that we have that differentiation. I sometimes look at some of the brand propositions and I don't really understand where one moves to the other. So if you looked at sort of some of their, they bring in sort of boutique markets, but it seems very much like their core brand. But ultimately, I think there's room for them all. But I wonder whether it's time to have a few less classes rather than keep adding them when we all want to change where our hotel's positioned.
Well, quite candidly, sometimes I feel like we have done all these classifications to make us feel better, but I don't know if the consumer knows any differently. So thank you for that. Dominic, with the pandemic, are you anticipating any seismic long-term changes in the industry? And if so, what might that be?
It's interesting. There's two ways to go about answering this. I think if I look at what people are doing when they're trying to look at investments today, I don't think they see any seismic changes, not from what I see people underwriting for new deals. So from that point of view, no. However, I going back to the conversation that you've just had with Alex about technology, I think we've just had a glimpse of the future over the last few months, and we've seen people being much more receptive towards technology than they have been ever before. And I think, I don't know what exactly it will be, but that is something that we should be able to take advantage of. And when we think about implementing the technology in the future, I think the broader base of clients, whether they're 70 years old or whether they're 25 years old, they're not afraid to use a mobile phone anymore to check in somewhere or to get a menu for a restaurant. And that will definitely change things. What I would say, though, that I think the biggest change for us going forward is not going to be something that has been driven because of the pandemic. It's actually, I believe, sustainability is going to have the biggest impact on us all over the next 10, 20 years. I mean, we have a team of 16 people, and our next hire will be a full-time professional for somebody who does nothing else but focus on our hotels and make sure that sustainability is kept in everybody's forefront.
Michelle, a question for you. What do you see as challenges for this industry? This industry is very volatile at the best of times, but moving forward, what do you think would help the industry and what do you think would hurt the industry?
Good question. I think you're right. It's a very volatile industry, and unlike other asset types, I think it is really key for the parties involved and parties investing in the asset or financing the asset that they understand that and they understand the business behind it. Because it's very, very normal that hotel performances are going down and are going up again. And I think that is just key to really understand the business behind it. In terms of challenges going forward, I think it's being adaptable, especially now with this transparent market situation that we're currently facing, in being able to adapt very quickly to these restrictions that are coming up. To adapt, as both Alex and Dominic mentioned before as well, with the whole technology. I think we saw that quick increase in that respect, the contactless, etc. I think opportunities are also what we've learned, or what the operational teams have managed to do during this crisis, is really going through being able to operate a asset much more cost efficient, and I think that we'll see that going forward as well. So I think it's really being adaptable, and I think we will. I don't know so much in the long run, but in the short run, we definitely see a change in the mix of the demand. The mix of clients will change in the short run. Currently the focus is definitely on the leisure. The question is how quickly will business customers and especially group markets be able to come back. We don't know how this whole home office situation and any future on how companies treat that whole home office also post-corona, how that will affect hotel demand. So I think it's really being able to adapt to that, that's a challenge going forward for hotels, at least in the short run.
So a question that we started talking about at the beginning when Dominic was relaying his experience of travel, where a trip that might have taken a day to go out, conduct your business and come back might have to be done over 3 days. In addition to the expense with multiple COVID tests, it's the discomfort and the time and standing in multiple lines to get through where you're trying to get to. Which brings me to the highly debated topic of vaccine passports. And this question is for all three of you. do you see the industry adopting that? Of course, the government regulations might or might not prevent it, but if you don't mind, Alex, taking the lead on it, your thoughts on vaccine passports, how will it help or hurt the industry? And do you think industry adopting that?
I think it's a kind of a catch-22 scenario, to be honest with you. I think without vaccine passports or some sort of recognition of vaccinations or some sort of control over COVID, as the hospitality industry, we will be restricted on the number of people we're allowed in a certain space. There will be long-term capacity issues within our restaurants and our bars. So I think we've got to find a solution, and I think the solution has to be smart, so that it's easy, it's accessible for people, and that we first and foremost eradicate this COVID from the world and be able to carry on and get back to our normal lives. But to give hospitality a chance, I think we need to have our venues full at capacity and people back enjoying themselves in a safe environment. And I think we need to have some sort of evidence that it is safe. And that to me is key to that, whether that is a vaccination passport, whether that is some sort of testing control, how it is affiliated, it should be very simple, very straightforward for people to use. It isn't for the hospitality industry, in my view, to police that. It shouldn't be down for us to be checking on people attending events. But we've talked about how technology can assist and help and support our industry. I think there's enough technology out there now to facilitate having some controls and checks and balances in place to making sure our venues are safe for people. So from a travel point of view, from a venue point of view, from a hospitality point of view, I think there has to be some sort of format, whether that is a vaccine passport, whether it's an app that we can download information which you can scan as you walk into a venue, whatever it is. I think there's got to be something if we are to get back to capacity in the short term.
Well, the unfortunate thing, every time the topic of vaccine passports comes up, people think of binary view. It's if you have the vaccine passport, you can do whatever you want to, and all the rest are going to be left behind, which becomes very controversial. My personal bias is that this is currently practiced in security lines. I have given my information to the government, so I go through a quicker line. Or for that matter, our simple thing that all of us practice every day is a driver's license. We go through it, we do certain things to get a permit to be able to drive. Now, if vaccine passports were implemented, that would not prevent from people that don't want the vaccines to come in, but they might have to go through a couple of other tests. Dominic, your thoughts, having just gone through this, your thoughts on vaccine passports?
Yeah, so look, I think if you look at in our industry, sadly for us, what we have seen is where our entire industry is discretionary. That means sadly the world goes on without us. And so what I think needs to happen, we need to take two things away. We need to take away the fear from traveling, and we need to make it easy to travel. If you look at, and I've heard UBS say yesterday that they look at high frequency data in the UK post lockdown 1, post lockdown 2, and they say that post lockdown 2, the retailers have had 8 times more business than they had post lockdown 1. So I think the whole fear aspect is negligible. People are not afraid of coronavirus anymore. And probably the vaccines have something to do with that. The second bit is ease of travel. And I have no doubt that if you look back at 2009 and 2001, post 9/11, that the aftermath of 9/11 still lives with us. The security, a tightening of security, that is still something we have from 20 years ago. So I am sure that there will be something that will survive this pandemic. In 20 years' time, people will talk about this and say, this is because of the pandemic, whether it makes sense or doesn't. What I would love to be the case is when a country has had when they've achieved herd immunity, what I'd like to be the case is that people will go back to complete freedom of travel, ease of travel, make as easy as possible, because it's only that way they will actually go back to the numbers that we were achieving before, and people will really be able to enjoy themselves in the same way that they were before. Whether that's going to be the case or not, I don't know. But having gone through the experience today that I had with my travel, I know this is the last time I'm going to travel until I can do so more freely again.
Well, there you go. There is a live example of deterrence within the travel where the trips.
And that's, I think, that's the whole reason why it's been in place, to deter us from traveling.
Yeah. Well, look, human beings are very resilient, and we have very short memories, which is a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. As the scientists, and I'm not a medic nor am I a scientist, but as the scientists have said, that this will not be the last time we go through this. There got to be some learnings from this pandemic that we can keep public safe so that we don't fall off the cliff like we did this time around. Michelle, your thoughts on vaccine passports before I turn it over to Sam? Michelle, I think you muted as well.
Sorry about that. I think I agree with what has been said, also from Alex at the beginning. I think, there needs to be a way to facilitate traveling again. And currently, as we've heard now from Dominic, on one hand, people will want to travel, but I think it also needs to be facilitated and be simplified, especially now of what I've heard from Dominic. So if there needs to be some structure, some rules, and if it what you have said before, if a vaccine passport just simplifies the process. So if you don't have it, you can still do it, but it's more complicated, but you can still do it. Maybe, whatever helps, but I think we do need to find quickly now a way to be able to open up the borders again and simplify the travels.
Thank you for that. Sam, any further thoughts or questions?
Well, I was just listening to the panel about this this passport. I think one of the things is that there is some technology that has been developed and has been actually sold to certain countries where there are the very uncomfortable corona test, which people end up taking now, which there is another technology which is like a breath test, similar like you would check you have alcohol in your breath. Same is for the corona, and it has been tested, and it simply is painless, and it is very quickly, and it's cloud based, and after that they have the technology to analyze what is your condition. And I think that certain things like that probably will stay with us, that in the event we need to test somebody for very quickly, it's not going to be a very painful experience, and it doesn't mean you need to have a quarantine for a long period of time. So just as it has been a very painful experience for a lot of people, I think some positives are coming out because of the tech the innovation is very fast in coming up with new and better ways to analyze all this from us. But also I had a discussion yesterday with a master's degree student out of Slovenia. Just a shout out to Jaka Godesha. We talked about what his view, he's 22 years old, so what his view is about technology in the next 10 years. Well, what he told me was that as far as he's concerned, the self-driven car will be a full entertainment center, which will prepare yourself for your delightful experience when you arrive to your destination. So that is his views. And I said, wow, okay, I'm learning something every time I talk to somebody who is in the beginning of their career. But we don't have any questions, so these were just some thoughts from my side.
Well, look, technology is in every aspect of our life, and I think it's going to continue to proliferate throughout. Whether we like it or dislike it, whether we're comfortable with it or not, I think it in certain cases, it has made life a bit easier, but it presents different challenges. So we will come back to that. Sam, one last question to the panelists, and I'm going to go through with all of them, just a very short snippet, maybe two things. And Michelle, I'll start with you. What do you think will be different in 5 years, looking down the future in our industry?
I think one thing is what Dominic mentioned, is the sustainability. That definitely will be something that will be part of us more and more going forward. So I think that will definitely something that will the industry will have to deal with and look into much more. The second one, good question. As a result of the pandemic, sorry.
You can have a think of that. Let me ask Alex.
Two different things I think which will be not dramatically, but will be different in the next 5 years. I think we'll see an embracement of technology. I think that's going to be one of the key things for the hotels and for the industry. And I think it's, we'll see mobile check-in and we'll see keyless entry, but I think we'll see a lot more than that. And I think we'll see profiling, and guests will be profiled and will understand what they require from a hotel. And I think the second point is I think we'll see lots more from an experience point of view. I think guests are looking for this experience, and I think that evolves around the food and beverage offering, pop-up restaurants, changing environments. I think the cookie cutter approach to which side of the room is my bathroom on and here's my bed. I think that there will be a lot of choice, and I think people will focus very much on experiences. So those would be the two I think would be different.
Dominic, would you like to add anything to that?
Well, it's a similar vein, really. One, I actually think 5G is going to really make a difference to the hotel space. Now you think, why are we equipping hotels with telephones? I think in 5 years' time, we're thinking, why are we equipping hotels with Wi-Fi? Because 5G will completely obliterate Wi-Fi, in my opinion. That's one thing. And the other thing, again, with technology, I just want to say, I really hope in 5 years' time, the whole reason why the five of us have probably made it to the hotel industry is the human touch. I really hope that the human touch doesn't get lost by the implementation of all this technology that we think is likely going to happen.
Well, very well said. Thank you so much, Dominic Seyrling with the Archer, Michelle Weiss with the Aareal Bank, and Alex Pritchard with the Axiom Hospitality. Thanks for all your insights and taking the time to be with us. It has been a fabulous conversation. Sam-Erik, over to you.
Yes, I'd like to also thank all the live viewers who have joined us from YouTube, LinkedIn, and from Facebook, and also replay viewers. There will be many more viewing this episode on YouTube, which will be posted up very shortly. But also, this is also converted to a podcast. So on the Hospitality Talks podcast, you will have a chance to listen to this discussion also. So we are looking forward to seeing you in our next episode, which will continue discussion about the opportunities, how we can do better in hospitality in the future. So thank you very much for the panel, and thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you soon again.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.